Direct here in Houston. And I know a lot of you have attended our webinars in the past, and we appreciate you doing that. And one thing that we're wanting to do for our clients and the people that use Courthouse Direct is to try to give you all more information about, more in-depth information, I would say, about the different tools that we have that are on our website. And one particularly great tool, we think, is the Grantor Grantee Index. And of course, the Grantor Grantee Index is the lifeblood of a researcher. And but just a little bit of background for some people that might be new to our company. We have been in business for over 31 years, working as abstractors and title researchers, mainly for engineers and surveying companies. And as time went through, we started building real estate databases as title researchers and abstractors. And so we own several companies. One is CourthouseDirect.com, which really is our online presence where we deliver Grantor Grantee Indexes and document images. Then we also own Integrity Title Company, so we are a licensed title agent in the state of Texas. In fact, we're licensed in 39 counties in the state. And then another company is Integrity Title Records, in which we build title plants for title insurance companies. And in fact, we're the largest provider of title plant facilities for title insurance in the state of Texas. And we do have title plants in 39 counties right now. We also own an abstracting company, which was our original abstracting company, which is Courthouse Specialist, and we still do research for engineers and surveyors. We also sponsor a couple of other websites that if you're not familiar with or not aware of, we want to make you aware of. One is CourthouseSquare.com, and Courthouse Square is where if someone is looking for a real estate professional, be it a surveyor or an appraiser or a real estate attorney, for instance, in a particular area, they can drill down to the state and then down to the county and find the people they want to do business with there. So if you're not listed there, I would encourage you to get listed, and it is a free service to search. It's also a free service to get listed. We also maintain a site which is called Landman Directcom, which is a tool for landmen that are wanting to know more about the different resources that are available to them. Again, our emphasis today is on Grantor Grantee Indexes, and you see, we believe that the Grantor Grantee Index is the fundamental research tool that we use as researchers. You know, there's people out there that build title plant facilities, whether it's in a small county or in a large county, and some of them brag about being a thick plant or some great title plant and that sort of thing. And that's well and good. And a title plant is a tool, just like any other tool that you use as a researcher. But the fundamental tool that we use as abstractors and landmen and people that rely on the public record is the Grantor Grantee Index. And when you think about people that are drilling oil wells or landmen that are doing research, they may use a title plant, but they typically are going to go back to the Grantor Grantee Index and double check anything they've done using a title plant, and that makes a lot of sense. And in fact, the way that we build our title plants is to actually integrate the Grantor Grantee Index into the legal description search, which we think, I call it belt and suspenders. That is, you're getting everything that you could get by doing so. So again, what we're going to talk about is just kind of an introduction to Grantor Grantee Indexes, also historical indexes, looking at kind of where we started and where we are today in terms of how indexes were created. There's different kind of searches, of course, that we do as researchers. One is on individual names, whether it's a husband and wife or just an individual by themselves, and also organizations or corporations. And sometimes just searching these different company names can be a little bit tricky, and I want to kind of discuss a little bit of that with you. Also, we've built into our databases what we call a SubSearch capability. And if you're not familiar with our SubSearch, you really need to be, because that can save you a lot of time, and it can really help you find that needle in a haystack. And then something new that we've been doing in our databases is building within our Grantor Grantee Indexes the ability to search by legal description. We don't really call it a title plant. We want to be a little bit careful about distinguishing what a title plant is versus a legal description search, but it is a good tool and one that we'll be showing you in just a little bit. Also, we may jump into what we call advanced searching or actual title plant searching, but only if we have time to do that. I would encourage you also to find the dashboard on your on the GoToMeeting, and feel free as we go along here to ask any questions that you might have. I reluctantly did not introduce Jennifer Riley, who's on the phone with us. Say hello, Jennifer.
Hello, everyone. Good morning.
Jennifer is going to be monitoring any questions that you have, and particularly if there's any questions that you have related to Grantor Grantee Indexes and you kind of have it in your mind right now, go ahead and pose the question, and then Jennifer will kind of give me those questions at the end of the discussion here today. Now, when we think about Grantor Grantee Indexes, there really are a lot of different Grantor Grantee types. We know in the older records, when we go into the courthouses, you might have different types of records out there. Those would be deed records or a separate mortgage or deed of trust record. You might also have a separate oil and gas record or judgment record or even a mechanic's lien record. So a lot of these different records will have their own indexes, Grantor Grantee Indexes, and then in other cases they're actually built into the overall Grantor Grantee Index. So making yourself familiar with the records in that particular county is really critical. Now, we know back in about the late 60s, mid-60s, I think the county clerks got together and said, well, it really doesn't make sense to keep these separate records, and therefore let's go ahead and switch all of these different individual records into one record that we're going to call the official records. And so most use the official record name. Many still use the official record name today, but others took on the name of real property records. So for instance, if you're in Brazoria County, it can get a little bit confusing because you think that, well, I pulled what I thought was not a volume and page number, but it was an official record, but now they also have another record they call a real property record. So you want to be a little bit careful in any courthouse in terms of making sure that the book type that you're pulling covers those areas. So again, there's what I call essential index information that you would find in any Grantor Grantee Index. Of course, you're going to find a Grantor and Grantee because that's what it is. It's a Grantor Grantee Index. And then the other thing you're going to find in the index is the type of instrument, the filing date of the instrument, the execution date, the volume and page number of the document itself. And of course, we used volume and page numbers when we had books, hard copy books, and then from there, you notice we went to film code numbers. But every document you file in the courthouse is assigned a clerk's file number, and many of the indexes will have a separate clerk file number. And then the clerk will also, in many cases, index a legal description. Now you notice next to execution date and legal description, I have an asterisk there. And the reason for that is because the county clerks do not always put an execution date in the index itself, and they don't always put a legal description either. And so, for instance, if there's a document that's filed in the courthouse that has multiple legal descriptions on it, let's say it has 30 properties on it, which you'll see a lot of cases where the county clerk will just write multiple properties or multiple tracts. And so they won't take the time to index all of those. And then in terms of the execution date, that's just another line they need to fill out, and some have just decided, we know what the filing date is, but to dig back and figure out what the execution date is not something we have time for, so we're not doing that. But it's kind of, I think, important to understand kind of the duty of the county clerk. And the duty of the county clerk is to index the names. So that's where we rely on the counties to do their job properly. And when they index the names, let's say there's 30 names or 100 names on a document, their job is to index all of those 100 names that might be there. And so we as consumers and people that are taxpayers and are paying the clerk to, when we file the documents with them, rely on the county clerk to index those names properly. Now, I will tell you, as a researcher, sometimes people are critical of county clerks. Oh, well, you know, they don't do that great a job or something like that. But I have to tell you, overall, the county clerks in Texas index their names very well. I work with these records every day, and I just feel strongly that they do a good job. Now, of course, there's times that the actual document filed in the courthouse spelled the name incorrectly, and therefore the county clerk indexed the name as it was filed in the courthouse. So that's not a issue necessarily with the county clerk. It may be an issue with the attorney that drafted the document or whoever drafted the document. So you want to keep that in mind. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about historical Grantor Grantee indexes, and if you notice, the index that we're showing on the screen is a record in Chambers County, and the first date on this is 1873. So just looking from left to right, of course, we have the surname of the party, and then the first name or the given name, which sometimes is initials and sometimes the full name. And then the next column over is the grantee name. And again, you'll notice that typically names are indexed by the last name and then space first name. And then we move over to the type or the kind of instrument or type of instrument, really being the same thing. And the clerk does their best to be able to identify the type of document that's being filed in the courthouse. But we're going to talk a little bit about, you might want to be careful sometimes with how they're indexing those. And then the recording information, in this case, we're looking at a volume B, page 23. And then next to that, we have the actual date of the filing, which you notice that the date of the filing was, looks like about 4 years after the actual execution date of the document itself. And then we have the legal description, which is out of the Jacob Armstrong survey. So again, this is typical of what you would see with any Grantor Grantee Index. We're calling this a Grantor Index or a Grantee Index, but also index are known as direct indexes or indirect indexes or reverse indexes. So they do kind of take on different names, but so indirect, reverse, Grantee Index, those are all pretty much synonymous. Now let's look down at the bottom where you see the handwritten records there. Again, same thing where we're looking at a reverse index where we list the grantees first and then the grantors, the type of document, the volume and page recording. In this case, they do show both the execution date and the recording information and the legal description on the property. Again, don't want to necessarily rely that that's all the legal descriptions that relate to this particular property, but in this case, they are giving that information to us. Now, I want to talk a little bit about searching Grantor Grantee indexes, and you see my kind of footnote there that I say not all Grantor Grantee indexes are equal. And so I wanted to just show you in Harris County, this is the county website, and we're searching the name James Irving in Harris County. And so we're just going to go and see what the results look like coming from the county. And when you look at these results, you can see that the first column is the clerk file number of the document, and then the filing date, and then the description of the property, then the names of the party, and then we move down and we see the section, lot, block number, the number of pages that the document is, and the film code number. Now, when I look at this particular index, I'm not trying to be critical of Harris County, but I like to use, if I'm using a Grantor Grantee Index, I want to see the grantee's name very clearly, separated from the grantor's name, just like they did in the older books. Visually, that's how my mind works, I guess, as an abstractor, having done it as long as I have. So I want to be able to look at an index and go straight to whatever it is that I'm looking for, and I really don't get that looking at this Harris County Index. And so this is just showing a search that we would do on our database. And you notice that in the case of the Harris County, you had two options. That was to search either the grantor or the grantee. In our case, we give you the option of searching both the grantor and the grantee with the same search. And I think that's critical because typically what you're trying to find is everything they bought and everything they sold, and then whatever they have left over. And in fact, that's the definition of an asset search when you think about it. You look at everything someone bought, and then you look at everything they sold, and whatever's left over is what they own, and that's what you typically do if you're doing some due diligence for perhaps an attorney that's going to sue someone, and they say, what has this guy got that I need to know about, and that's how you're going to do it. So let's look at the results that we're showing below. So again, looking from left to right, we have the grantor name, the grantee name, the document type, the doc ID number, the file date, the subdivision name, and then the section, lot, block number. And in the earlier documents in Harris County, as we mentioned earlier, you did have a separate volume and page number and then also a film code number. Kind of interesting on this particular document is you have 3 file numbers. You have the doc ID number, which is that B421883, and then you have a volume and page number, and then a film code number, so all on one document. If I were going to cite this particular document, I would always want to rely on the official file number, which is the clerk file number. But in the older records where you're referencing a volume and page number, that's okay too. But if you're going to reference the volume and page, you need to make sure that you're referencing the type of record that it is. So you could have a volume and page of a mortgage record, and you could also have the very same volume and page for a deed records. So if you don't reference it as a volume and page deed records, someone might get confused or pull the wrong document. So the citation on that is important. So visually, when you look at this particular index, the way it lays out, again, I can visually look at the Irving name and see, okay, this is my guy or this isn't my guy. And to me, personally, I think this lays out a lot better in terms of being able to search the record. Now, I mentioned that we do have a SubSearch capability on our site, and in this case, what we're doing is saying we're going to run the James Irvin name again, but this time we're going to match that against the subdivision that we think he owns property in, which is the Crestmont subdivision. So again, we've put in the James Irving name, and now under the SubSearch, we put in the name Crestmont, and you can see down below where it's matching Crestmont and James Irving. So instead of going from what was 20 records, I think, as I go to the page before, we've narrowed that down to 5 records. So you're able to, let's say, for instance, you were running the more common name like a John Smith, and you knew you were looking for John Smith at a Crestmont subdivision. You certainly could go through all the John Smiths, but it might be more advantageous to you to use the SubSearch, put in the Crestmont subdivision, find out all the activity against John Smith and Crestmont, and that might make you more productive in terms of your searching. Now, something that we've been working on pretty diligently on, I mentioned that we do build title plant facilities for title insurance companies, and we decided, I guess a few months ago, that what we wanted to do was to make it easier for people to actually pull up a property by the legal description of the property and build that into our Grantor Grantee Indexes. Again, I always want to caution people that this is not what I would consider, quote, a title plant, but it is a tool to be able to sort the information you're looking for quicker. Now, we do own title plants, and we own what we call, or we provide what we call geo indexes, which is really geared towards searching geographically and then overlaying that search with the Grantor Grantee Indexes. But again, what we've tried to do here in all the counties where we have data is to make it easier for our users to be able to search by a legal description and pull out the information they need so it would make them more productive. So in this particular case, we're looking for Lot 4, Block 3 of Crestmont, and we know that's in Section 1. So as I ran the search, you can see the colors that are highlighting the lot and block numbers, and then you can see that I've circled the deeds because the deeds are what I'm looking for to see if I have a good chain of title. So if I were trying to research in the example here, California Federal Savings and Loan, and purely the Grantor Grantee Index, that can be difficult, and that can be very time consuming. So if we can allow you as a user of our system to be able to put in a subdivision name and a lot and block number and then get to that information quicker, then that hopefully is going to make you more productive, and that's really our goal, is to help you be more productive. Keep in mind that
Hey, Paul, I have a question. I have a question that just came in related to what you're talking about here. The question is, how would you enter a sub-search for only abstract?
It really depends on the county. And so, for instance, if I'm going to go back just a couple slides here, and you'll see we have on this heading, you'll see we're in Harris County here, so every county is a little bit different, but we try to give you a little bit of a clue on that. But for instance, if we're looking for abstract 874 in Harris County, that would be entered into the lot number field, and it would be indexed as A0874. So if I were looking for everything out of abstract 874, I wouldn't put in anything except in the lot field A874, and then that would pull back everything out of that abstract. Now, we're going to do a demonstration a little bit later where we're going to show you in like these smaller counties where you can put in an abstract number or a survey name and be able to pull that information out in what we call our freeform fields. So I hope that's answering the question. Let's look at what I consider some important notes when it comes to Grantor Grantee Index searching. And you see my label up there that says less is more. And that's really very important because when you're going to do a search, you want to throw the net as wide as you can. If, let's say, you're pulling back too many results, then you start adding characters or adding letters to the name, and that will narrow your search results. So for example, if I were running the name Jonathan Whitfield, I would run Whitfield Jon. And I would do that because I want to make sure that if there was a time that he was using the name John Whitfield instead of Jonathan, because let's say he signed a mechanics lien to build a swimming pool in his yard or something like that, well, he may, have written his name down, and then the pool company that filed the mechanics lien, just read Jon. So you want to try to keep your searches just as broad as you can. And again, if you're ending up with too many results, then you just simply hit the back button on your browser, add another character to the name, and then search again. And a good example of this really is this Able Plumbing that I showed down below. We're running a company name, which is Able Plumbing, and you can see if I had spelled the name plumbing, spelled it out as plumbing, I would have missed that record right there, that first one with the state of Texas. And so if I put in just Able P, then I'm going to pull back everything with Able P. Now, I may have pulled back Philip Able or Paul Able or some other name like that, and maybe I'd have to look at 30 or 40 records to make sure that I'm not missing anything. But that's really not a big burden, but to make sure that you don't miss anything. Another thing, another example I'm not showing here, but I just wanted to discuss with you briefly, is different names like De La Garza, or we're looking for a name like McMullen or McCon, or these different names that are I'm sure there's a grammatical term for that, but these different names that have these MCs on them or VANs on them and that sort of thing. You really need to be thinking about, as you're entering those names, if I'm looking for the name McCann, I'm going to enter the name both as MC space C, and I'm going to enter the name as MCCA, because if I don't do that, there is a chance I would have missed it during the time that that particular indexing person put a space in it. And again, a lot of times it's not the fault of the indexer, it's because on that particular document that was filed in the courthouse, they put a space in it, and in the previous document they didn't put a space. You will see situations where the counties try to be consistent on that, but again, it's better safe than sorry. You just want to be careful as you're entering those names. And let's think about company names. If I was looking for a name like ABC Plumbing, for instance, I would run it as ABC together. I would also run it as A space B space C Plumbing. I would also probably run it as AB together space C. And you need to do that, because if you don't do it, you're going to find that one case where they put a space in there or something like that. So any kind of a name that that are letters to a name, you really have to kind of play with those and make sure you're entering all the different ways that you should enter it.
Hi, Paul.
Yes.
We have another question in relation to this. They asked, what about easements? For example, Center Point in Harris County, or maybe other examples that you might have?
Well, you know, we do have, under the SubSearch capability, you do have the ability to put in a doc type, which is easement, and then look for all the easements. Or if I knew that I was looking for, let's say, an easement out of, let's say, the John Taylor survey, and I knew that it was going to Centerpoint, the same way we had done that search earlier where we said, okay, we're going to put in a survey name, but we're going to match that against the company name that I'm searching for, then I can do those matches. And in fact, I'll do that when we do our demonstration a little bit later. And if you'll remind me to do that to search for an easement.
Sure.
So another couple of notes here. Don't always rely on the county clerk's legal descriptions. I kind of hammered on that a little bit earlier, but the county clerk, their job is to index the names and not the legals. So you want to be a little bit suspicious on any legal descriptions that you're getting from the county. And do not always rely on the county clerk document types. And the county clerks, again, do a pretty darn good job of indexing the document types, but sometimes you might have somebody that's new to the clerk's office that they look at a document that's filed in the record, and it may be labeled, you know, as a warranty deed, but if you read the language of the document, maybe it was a mineral deed. But the county clerk is just seeing that whatever the heading of the document, and it's labeled as a warranty deed, so they're indexing it as a warranty deed, which again, that's no fault of their own. But again, if I'm training an abstractor, what I emphasize to any abstractor that I've ever worked with is you must read the documents. You can't rely on whatever a document is labeled as to feel like, you know, yeah, that's what the document is. You have to read the document and read that specific language that would distinguish it from being a deed or a mineral deed or a royalty deed or whatever it might be. So again, be very careful when you look at the document types. They're usually pretty good at the clerk's office, but you do have to be careful. Now, let's look at a couple of other indexing issues related to liens. In most cases where you have the plaintiff in a lawsuit that has won a judgment, that plaintiff is typically indexed as the grantor, and the defendant is indexed as the grantee. And when the abstract of judgment is filed in the county clerk's records, that's how that is indexed. So the example up above where you see the Ollie McAllister apparently was the defendant in the lawsuit. In that particular abstract of judgment in 1990, they were indexed as the grantee. But then we look at Sheila Purcell, who apparently was the judgment debtor on a particular judgment, and Sheila Purcell, being the defendant, was indexed as the grantee. The two exceptions in Texas are Bexar and El Paso counties. You want to be aware of that, and that's why running both the grantor and the grantee when you're searching a name is critical. If you just relied on searching, let's say, a grantee index, and then the data entry person had switched those names around, even in a county where you're not supposed to do that, you know, you would have missed that. So particularly when it comes to IRS liens, abstracts of judgments, any kind of involuntary liens like that, I think it's incumbent upon the researcher to pull the document and make absolutely sure that particular judgment is not against their people. So just keep that in mind. Now, if I'm searching for subdivision plats, most every county, if I put in the subdivision name under the grantor column, it will pull back the references to all the subdivision maps there. If I'm looking for the deed restrictions in a particular area, then I typically would want to enter the grantee's name to be able to look for the deed restrictions. So there's two examples that I'm giving here. Timber Grove Manor, where I was looking for a map for Section 5. It shows here's the map where it's recorded, and then the volume and page number of the map, or in Harris County we actually call that a film code number for the map. And then the Grantee Index, where I was looking for Timber Grove Manor deed restrictions, and it's showing a restriction that was filed in 1984. So again, keep that in mind. So now that we've gone through the little slide here, let's go ahead and go into Courthouse Direct itself. And you may be wondering, well, which counties do you have Grantor Grantee Indexes in? And we're on the Grantor Grantee page in Harris County. And if I click on the Available County button that's in the middle of the page, that will bring up a page that's going to show us where all the counties are where we have available Grantor Grantee Indexes. And we do have some Grantor Grantee Indexes in California, but most of the indexes that we have are in Texas. And we have, I think we're up to about 81 indexes right now. We believe we're going to add probably another 30 or 40 before the end of the year because we're being very aggressive on adding these counties. We also have, along the left-hand side, we do have a button here. I'm not going to click on it right now, but if you're wondering what data we have in any particular area of the state, you can click on that Texas data coverage, and it'll show you all the data that we have, whether it's Grantor Grantee Indexes or document images or anything that we have, that subdivision maps, that sort of thing, anything that we have. I'm going to click back on the Home button, and of course to get to the Grantor Grantee Indexes, there's a few ways to get there. One is to click on the Grantor Grantee tab at the top. Also, I can click on the state of Texas and then drill down to, let's say, the county, Hayes County, and then I could click on Grantor Grantee Index and go to that particular county index if I wanted to go there. Now, let's say, for instance, I was looking for some historical records. We're going to start there, and then we're going to look at the current records, but I'm looking for a historical record. So in here on the left-hand side, you see the button that says Historical Deeds Plats. If I click on that, what that's going to do is bring up what we call our historical document database. And on here, we're going to be able to drill down to either the grantor or the grantee index in a particular county, and you can see all the counties listed there. I know that's probably a little hard to read where you're sitting, but let's say, for instance, I'm looking in Chambers County, and I'm looking for the grantee index from 1946 to 1955. You notice it says GG_Chambers Grantor Grantee Index. When I click on that, there's two choices there. I'm either going to be searching a grantor index or a grantee, also known as a reverse index. In this case, I want to look under the reverse index. And also want to look from 1946 to 1955, so I'm just going to find that period. And I'm looking for, let's say, the letter A through K. And so, for instance, if I just click on the index page here, the page is going to open in this little window on the right-hand side.
Hey, Paul, while you're doing some of this demonstration, we do have a few people on here that are training employees and wanted to see, some newer employees, excuse me, but wanted to see if we could include right-of-way along with easements during the training.
Okay. Yeah, just remind me that it's kind of a funny, in some ways, kind of a funny question because a right-of-way is kind of more of a generic name. If somebody says find the right-of-way, you know, that could be a road, it could be an easement, it could be a pipeline, it could be a lot of different things. But again, kind of when we get to the end of this, remind me about that. So for instance, this is the typical index page that you would find in any courthouse. What we do in our company is we go out to the county clerk's offices and we scan the books ourselves with some very high-end scanners. I know this page may look a little bit dark, but if you go to the bottom right-hand corner of the page, you can adjust the lighting to make that read a little bit quicker, better. You can see how that does look a lot better. But let's say, for instance, we were looking for a name that started with, you know, BRA. So if I look along the right-hand side, I can find, you know, different letters of the alphabet. And if I'm looking for BRA, it's going to be on page 29, if you can see that where my mouse is hovering. And then what we've done along the left-hand side in these historical indexes is try to make it so it's a little easier to get to the page you might be looking for. So we kind of label this as between pages 25 to 35. So 29, you know, hopefully would fall pretty close to this image number 46. I landed on page 27, so I just want to flip over to, there's 29. So that's the first page of page 29. And then from there, I can just look at everything that, let's say, Bradford did or Bradley did. So I go to the bottom of that page, and I just click on there's a next button at the top, and just flip on the next page. And this is like turning pages in the courthouse is exactly what it's like. And that's the way we want it to be. We want it to be as close to the experience that you have in a courthouse as possible. I kind of joke sometimes that if we only had like a little audio that sounded like a page turning, I think we would be there. So, so that's Chambers County, where again, if I was running the index, again, it's like pulling the book off the shelf. I know the year that I'm looking for. I know the letter of the alphabet. I just pull the book and turn the pages. You notice how as I'm leaving the index, I'm closing the folders down, because if you don't do that, the folders will remain open when you come back. In this case, let's jump down to Dimmitt County and look in the Dimmitt County Index. And let's say we're looking under, let's choose the reverse index. But before we do that, you notice, as I mentioned before, there is a separate oil and gas index from the real property index. And so if you were looking for oil and gas records from 51 to 2003, that's where you would look there. Now let's go into the Grantor or Grantee Index. And in this particular county, they did have a general index where they combined both the Grantor and Grantee up until 1911, and then 1912 they started using the Grantor Grantee. So I'm just going to just again drill down to a particular year here, let's say 1948 to 1953. And you're going to notice in this particular county where what they've done is they've indexed the letters. This is not a very large county. So what they do is they index all the letters of the alphabet together, and they don't have a separate index for each name, because it's just not as active a county. So for instance, if I'm looking for the letter B in this particular time period, which was 48 to 53, I would just jump on the letter B, and then all the letter B records are going to be here. Now, interesting enough, if you look at this particular index, it has all those essential things that we talked about earlier, but what it's missing is any legal description whatsoever. So if you're working on an index that does not have a legal description, we call that a blind index. And in fact, Galveston County for many, many years had a blind index. So as a researcher, we'd know if we're going to Galveston County to do research, we're working on a blind index, which means we have to make a list of all the documents we need to look at, and anything that even is suspicious, you have to write it down and you have to pull the book and look at it. So you got a lot of muscles throwing those books around in Galveston County. But again, here we would just flip through the pages, look for everything under the letter B, and generally speaking, these pages will turn pretty quickly for you. And then, for instance, if I needed to pull a particular document, let's say if you look at this record here from Barry to, looks like a Debler Auto, that's kind of or Auto Debler, I guess is the name, then that would be under volume 102, page 412. So for instance, if I was looking for volume 102, page 412, I needed to look at that particular deed book, then I can, again, you notice I'm just closing these pages out, and I'm just going to go to what we call our multi-page deeds, and I'm going to just drill down to volume 102, and then I want to look for page 412. So I just want to move down here to page 412 and look at 412. And we can see, again, I can make that a little bit darker to make it easier to read, but I can see the Barry to Dobler document. And then I can notice that it's actually a two-page document, so I can, down at the bottom, I can flip on the right arrow and turn to the next page. Now, we make these documents available free to look at. If you decided you wanted to download the document, you would pay a fee to do that. But a lot of times, again, using a blind index, you're having to look at a lot of documents to figure out which documents you really need to download, and kind of as a service to our customer, instead of saying, hey, we're going to charge you every time you look at a document, we just make these documents available to you, and then if you decide you want to download them, there again is a nominal charge to do that. So let's leave Dimmitt County and let's go to a county, and let's do a Grantor Grantee search under what we might say is our current indexes, if you will. So actually, I want to go to Washington County next. I'm in Liberty County, so I'm just choosing my little drop down here, and I'm just going to go to Washington County. And you'll notice when I get to Washington County, I do have these different options of running what we call just the Grantor Grantee Index search or a lease check search, and that will be a time in another webinar that we'll talk about oil and gas leases. But in this case, we just want to run the Grantor Grantee search. So the party name that I'm looking for here is the name Janet Minor, M-I-N-O-R. So again, I'm going to put in Minor, Janet. You know, I could spell it out or not spell it out. I'm just going to put in J-A-N. So when I put in Janet Minor, I can see that there's 47 records with J-A-N Minor. And these are pretty much all Janet Minor. I don't see any that are not Janet. But let's say, for instance, I know that, let's say there's 3 pages of Janet Minor. But what I was looking for is what Janet Minor did in the Atlow subdivision. So I'm just hitting the back button on the browser one time. And when I did that, I'm going to go down where it says legal, and I'm going to put in A-T-L-O-W. So what I'm doing is saying, go match everything that has Jan Minor with Atlow, and you can see here's all the Atlow matched with Minor and all the activity with her name under that. There's some consistency to the way that this particular free-form legal is indexed, and I've not done this, so I'm kind of experimenting. But let's say, for instance, I'm just going to copy that legal description name, and I'm going to go down here where it says legal, and I'm going to say, go search without a name. Go search everything that has that lot and block on it, and just see what happens here. And again, I'm just copying what was shown on this and see if we have a chain of title. So what we've got is a Whitson Lumber Company to a Mark Swaim, and then Swaim to Holly, and then it looks like Marlboro to Minor. Then we've got, you know, maybe she still owns it. So again, it's kind of not something you want to bet the ranch on, but if it allows you to get your chain of title quicker, you can use that legal description to be able to search that way. And so you can see how using that SubSearch with the name Minor, how you can get to the information you need to get to quicker. Now, I'm going to jump over to Liberty County, where I was just a second ago. I'm going to jump to Liberty, and let's say, for instance, what I'm looking for is a person by the name of Justine Cooper. So again, under the party name, I want to put in Cooper, and I'm going to put in JUS Cooper, and just see what comes up here. It shows that there's 25 records under Justine. Actually, what I was going to do before is just put in J Cooper in this county, Liberty County. So you have 133 records. And again, just by hitting the back button and adding a couple more characters, we reduce those number of records that come back to 25 records. And again, if what I was looking for was everything that Justine did out of 187 acres, then I can hit my back button, and under the acreage amount down here, just type in 187 and just say, go match everything with Justine and 187. And it goes to the database matching those things together. So, or let's say, for instance, I was looking for everything that was out of the Donahoe survey that was listed there. So I'm just going to go here under the legal, I'm just going to put in D-O-N-A-H-O and not put in any kind of acreage amount. Just say, go find everything that's in Donahoe. And so it's going through the whole database, and it's really doing a lot of number crunching here, because Donahoe could be a very large survey. And in fact, what we see here is that there's a little message that comes up that says greater than 1,500 records, narrow your date range. So for instance, the limitation is 1,500 records. So if I wanted to narrow the date range, then I could hit the back button, put in a from date here. So let's say 1/1/1990, 1990. probably wants me to choose. So let me do that. And then it's going to do the same search. Again, sometimes it'll take a little longer because it's having to search a lot. In this particular county, Donahoe could be a very large survey, and that's the reason we keep coming up with, narrow the date range. Well, I could put in 2000 forward or do it that way. But I could also, let's say, for instance, I know that what I'm looking for really was things that were in Donahoe that were out of, let's say, that were a 9.5 acre tract. So again, I'm looking for Donahoe 9.5. I probably do not have my number lock on, 9.5, and then search that. And again, it's crunching through everything with Donahoe looking for 9.5. You will notice that it picked up maybe something that's a 239.5 because all it's looking for is 9.5 out of Donahoe. But still, what we've been able to do here is narrow that 1,500 records down to 45 records that hopefully we can go through and say, yes, those are the records that I need. And then we click on the boxes for the documents that we need, say buy documents, and then it downloads the documents to us. So let's go back. I'm going to go to Harris County now, and let's do the question that was asked earlier about the easement search. So again, I'm just going to choose Texas, and then I'm going to choose Harris County, and then I'm going to choose the Grantor Grantee Index. And I know what I'm looking for here is where, let's say the party name is Houston Lighting and Power Company, so Houston L. And I know that the other party I'm looking for is City of Baytown, City of BAY. So when I search that, that's a very, if I was searching this particular search in Harris County, I would be there for a couple weeks, I think. But if I can search the SubSearch with City of Baytown with Houston Lighting and Power Company as a party name, you can see how quickly it comes up. In fact, I just put in City of B, so it picked up City of Bel Air. So from here, I can, with a few results here, I can go through and find whatever it is I'm looking for. Or let's say, for instance, I'm looking at this Harvey Whiting survey, which is a fairly large survey. I'm just going to hit my back button one time and say, well, I'm looking for Houston Lighting and Power Company out of the Harvey Whiting survey. And in fact, I probably wouldn't spell out Harvey. I want to just do Whiting. I want to keep that search as broad as I can, and it's going to pick up everything out of Harvey Whiting there. And then, now not all these records have like an acreage amount to them. Some will have an acreage amount, and when they do have an acreage amount, you can actually take that acreage amount and search that also. So do keep that in mind. And so again, hopefully I'm answering the question on the easements. You can tell how, let's say, for instance, the doc type for the easements is identified as EASMT, where in another county it may have been just EMT. So you do need to familiarize yourself somewhat in the different ways that that particular county would index a particular document, whether it's a deed or a mineral deed or whatever. They sometimes use abbreviations that can be a little bit tricky, but they've gotten better lately, I think, in being more consistent in the way that they abbreviate the legals. So how are we doing on time, Jennifer?
Looks like we're good, and it looks like you did answer that question that they were looking for. Currently, it looks like you've answered everything everyone wrote in about, but now is a good time. If there's any final questions, you can submit them on the dashboard on your screen, and we'll try to get those answered here in the next couple minutes.
While we're doing that, I do want to show y'all some people that they really like our Grantor Grantee indexes, but they feel like, well, I'd really like to have access to your title plan, your geo index. So we do have this down at the bottom right-hand corner. You see that button that says geo index. This is where you can go in and actually do searching in the title plan. So in this case, I'm just going to do a search in Harris County, and the name that I'm looking for, let's say, is I'm looking for Gessner Grove subdivision, and I'm looking for lot number 5, and I'm looking for block number 1 of Gessner Grove. Now, I don't always put in a section number because perhaps they didn't know there was going to be a section 2, so they don't put in a section. So if I know it's section 1, I don't always put in a section number, but if it's a section 2, then I would do that. So here's everything with Gessner Grove, section 2. And what I can do is just build a report. So for instance, where the colors match across, I know that I got a good hit. So I'm just going to go through here and add some certain documents to my report. And I can actually name the report at the bottom. So I'm just going to name it, Gessner Grove, Lot 5, Block 1. And I'm going to add that information to my report. Once I've done that, I can say, well, now I need to run the name, this Sylvia Gia name. So you notice I just simply clicked on the name, and it automatically populates that name into what we call our general search, which is searching both the grantor and the grantee. From there, I can add all of the records into the data into this search. And you might look at this and say, well, Paul, I think you already added that when you did your legal description search. It doesn't hurt. You can add it again, and it doesn't duplicate the information. Now I want to look at the report that I'm building, so I'm just going to click on the View Report button, and there's my report. But I can look at it and say, you know what, this is not in chronological order, so I want to put everything in chronological order by clicking on the file date, and then I want to pull my documents related to this file. So I just click on the little asterisk there, say Get Selected Documents. That goes over to our image database so that I can view the documents. And then I simply click on the document on the right-hand side, and then open that, and I've got the document on the screen. I've actually got it on my dual screen, so let me pull that over here. So that quickly I can just build this run sheet and view the documents. And then let's say, for instance, I want to email this document to Jennifer. What I could do, there's a couple things I can do. I can just click, before I actually save it, I can copy the name that I want to save it under. And then I can click on Save Report as MS Word, and I'm clicking Open, and this is going to drop this run sheet that I'm building into a Word document. You're going to see that Word is going to open here in just a second, if it's not already open.
Paul, the question was brought up, can records be exported to Excel files?
Well, what I just did just now is where I dropped this into a Word document, but you can take this same record right here, and I can drop that into an Excel file. But you cannot do that from the Grantor Grantee Index. Well, let me take that back. You can do it from the Grantor Grantee Index. It's just a little clumsy, although that's something we've talked to our programmers about, is to have a button on the file that on the record that just says export as XML or Excel. We haven't done that yet, and I guess maybe the reason we haven't done it is because we already have that capability in the Geo Index title plan. And again, this was what I was kind of showing. If I wanted to send this particular run sheet that I built, these are hyperlinks to the document. So I could click on any of these documents, and I could hyperlink those. And then from here, I could say, I want to send these to Jennifer. So it's going to open up my, assuming I have my email open, it'll open up the email, and then I can just hit the forward button and just send that to her. So I essentially, very quickly, I built a run sheet. There it is right there. I'll even label it as a run sheet. And I want to send this to Jennifer, so I'm going to just start typing her name, Jennifer. And then I'm going to hit the send button. And when I do that, she's going to receive that particular email, and she's going to be able to open those documents. I can also email directly from this report. We have a button down below here that says Email Report To. So, for instance, I could send this to myself, pcones@portah.com. If I can spell, portah.com, and then click on Email this report, and then I just sent that report to myself. So I can receive the email, and then I hit the forward button to whoever I want to send it to. So a lot of functionality built into this Geo Index title plan. It's actually very affordable for any large company to be able to access this. And the real power of this, we think, is the ability to use what we call our general search, where if, again, I'm looking for Houston Lighting and Power Company that did business with the city of Baytown, you see that's my common example, then I can just put in Houston L, put in a plus sign, match that against City of Baytown, and then I could say, well, what I'm looking for is City of Baytown for the 6.5 acres. Again, I'm hitting my back button one time, putting another plus sign, 6.5, searching that again, and saying, go find everything with Baytown with 6.5, and it narrows that down. So very powerful tool here. We also have a lot of other different data where you can search for subdivision plats and just all the different kinds of in-depth searching that we provide for our title insurance customers. But we do make that same available, that data available to our non-insurance customers too. We have another question there.
Yes, it says earlier you said that for an absolute identification of a document that you would list the file ID. Do you mean the document ID or film code?
Well, let's look at, a clerk file number is an official number for a document. So let's look at this example that I've got on the screen here. You see the doc ID number there that says H417417? That is a proper citation of this particular document. The film code number is referencing where the film code can be found if you go to the courthouse. And that's actually true for the older volume and page numbers. Like if I was going to pull a deed record in volume 412, page 11, I don't know what the file number, the clerk file number is for that. But if I reference volume 4, page 412, page 11 of the deed records, that's a proper citation also. So it's kind of in Harris County, again, if I was going to cite a number, a clerk file number, I would do like the letter H here. But again, it really just kind of depends on where you're at. If it's the older records, you're going to reference the old volume and page numbers. If it's a newer record, typically you're going to reference the clerk file number as the proper reference.
It looks like that's all the questions we have for now, which wraps us up in a perfect time.
Well, great. Y'all will receive a kind of a follow-up email, and so if there was any questions that you meant to ask or didn't get around to, feel free to do that. And again, we certainly appreciate everyone being here today, and if there's any little gem of information that helped you, then we're happy to do that. Feel free to call us anytime or email us if we can help you, and we'll look forward to visiting with you soon. Thank you.